Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this third and last webinar in the three-part series for digital marketing for restaurants. This series of webinars has been brought through the Supporting and Backing Historic Small Restaurants grant by the National Trust for Historic Preservation and American Express. So we are providing today the third session entitled Creative Strategies to Stand Out in a Crowded Cyberspace. And we are going to focus on expanding and creating more reach with the content that you have online on your own platforms, using social media and using other third-party sites that you can take to your advantage. So the idea is that successively, the content that we are sharing with you in the webinars is building upon the information that we have shared on the previous ones. So overall program view, just as a refresher, we are providing restaurant owners and managers with an overview for drafting a marketing plan, as well as actionable tips and ideas on how you can reach and communicate with your selected target markets using different digital media channels and social channels. In this session today, we are talking about creative strategies to stand out in a crowded cyberspace, and we are going to learn how to communicate with your guests via storytelling and how to take advantage of the different social media channels so that you can amplify your message and position your restaurant's brand in a consistent way. Just a little quick recap of the previous two sessions. So in session number one, we talked about 4 key points. First and foremost, knowing your customer. It's very important that you identify your target markets so that you can learn about them, learn what their preferences and motivations are, and that way you can craft your product and you can adjust your product and craft your marketing message tailored specifically to that target market. Sometimes we have the temptation to say that our restaurant is equally available for anyone, in the sense that we don't have a specific target market, that we welcome all types of guests and everything. And of course, the restaurant is open to all types of guests, but it's very important to identify the target market specifically because, for example, the needs of a family dining out with very small children could be very different than the needs or expectations of a couple looking for a romantic dinner out. The needs of somebody that has a very short amount of time during their lunch break at work is very different than somebody that wants to spend the afternoon enjoying the view of their favorite restaurant. So different customers will have different needs, so it's important that we understand them so that we can, target and craft the message to them. Obviously, knowing what motivates them, whether it's the speed of our service, whether it's the elaborate dishes on the menu, or whether it's the coziness and the ambience and everything that we provide. We need to see exactly what is the key motivators for our customers. That way, we can match them with what is that unique value proposition that our restaurant brings. And then once you have all that information collected, making the effort of writing the marketing plan down. It's very important. And I know that in a lot of cases, with all the other responsibilities that we have running our restaurants, we might be doing our marketing sort of on the fly, or maybe, when we have time available. So it's definitely a best practice to write your marketing plan down. That way you can go back to it and readjust during the year when necessary. And even during the planning of your marketing efforts for the following year, if you have it written down, you can go back and adjust and review some of the elements of what might have worked, what you might need to change or adjust, and different things like that. So that was our first session. On our second session, we talked about the importance of having a digital home, having your own website. And your own website, key things, information needs to be accurate and up to date, and make sure that it's mobile friendly. more and more people are accessing online and are going online and doing searches from a mobile device. So you need to make sure that your website is mobile friendly and that it will adjust to different sizes of screens for people viewing. So it's important to have your digital home. Today, I'm going to be talking a lot about social media and third-party platforms and video platforms, and they are very useful in your marketing effort. But I need to make emphasis that they are not a substitute for having your own website. Your own website is your digital home. You own that space and you have control of it. Social media platforms, even if you create an account and you have a page in the social media company, you don't control when or how that social media platform is managed. You don't control the adjustments that they might do on their algorithm and rules on how information is shown to people. You don't control if that company is going to be in business 1 month or 1 year or 5 years from now. So we take advantage and we use those platforms as much as we can based on the needs and uses of our consumers, of our customers, but we rely on our own website as, you know, the home base of our digital information. So we talked about the importance of that, and there are many different options on how you can create a website or improve your website if you already have one, and the range of pricing and options it varies significantly. After that, we talked about the importance of helping your customers, you know, current customers and future potential customers, helping them find you online. Two key elements there are search and maps. More and more people are doing search queries that are very specific. They're called long form search queries or long tail search queries, where people are actually posing a question during the search. You know, restaurants that are open near me right now, restaurants with a specific type of cuisine that are open near me, restaurants that offer a front door or curbside delivery. You know, the queries can be very, very specific. So if you have all that information available online, then your restaurant is going to appear better in searches. There are many different search engines. One of them, Google, controls a very significant amount of the search traffic. So if you are starting on creating and building that footprint online, then Google My Business is a very good start. Because by creating your profile in Google My Business, you have different options. One, if you don't have a website yet, then you can create a website for free that is going to be hosted on their site. If you have a website, then you can link your website, your existing website, to your Google My Business account. And then there are a couple of areas where you will fill some information about your business, about your operating hours, about your services. You can upload photos, your address, phone number, other things. And then that information from Google My Business is then transmitted and is then used to populate searches and to popular map requests when people go on a Google search or on Google Maps. So it's a very important step to helping your customers find you. And then the third element that we talked about in the last session was making sure that you are harnessing the power of online reviews. You know, whether we like or whether we don't like reviews, whether we personally use reviews or provide reviews when we go out for services, there is a significant portion of the population. There is a pretty big, sizable market of people that actually read reviews, and they influence the decision that they make as to whether they are going to visit a new restaurant or whether they are going to go out to a new location. So very important to keep that in mind. We had, and you can see on the recording of session 2, a guest speaker from Yelp, where she explained the process of claiming your listing if it already exists, and if not, creating a listing and, you know, making sure that the information there is accurate as well. But besides Yelp, you have, you know, Zomato, TripAdvisor, Google My Business reviews, Facebook reviews, Facebook recommendations. You have a lot of different online review sites that you can use and take advantage of. So those are the recaps from the previous 2 sessions, and they lead us into this 3rd session, building up into what or how we can use third-party platforms, social and other platforms that that can complement the work that we are doing on our website and on our other efforts. So one of the things on social that we need to start looking at more and more is that people want to talk in social, talk with, and not talk to. That's a very important distinction, because if you are planning on going on social media and all of your content is just going to be a complete advertising message that is one-way communication, you are going to disengage a lot of potential customers that want to interact with businesses online. So you need to make sure that, I'm not saying that you cannot run ads on social media. Of course you can, and sometimes they could be very valuable, but you need to also include in your mix of postings that you do online other types of posts that are more of a communication style and not necessarily just flat out advertising. People want to communicate with the businesses that they like. People want to share information about those businesses. People want to see that engagement, and they don't want to feel like they're just being sold to a service all the time. The key takeaway there is that if you are able to use storytelling, there is a very powerful way to connect with your guests and to attract new customers. And the message that you craft around your story is going to be another element in that conversation starter with possible customers. Why are stories so important? They are very important when we do marketing because they can make an emotional connection, and that drives a lot of potential decisions when people are buying products and services. In our first session, when we were talking about the importance of knowing who your customers are and knowing what their motivations are, several of the elements that we were talking about included a very emotional charge to them. So for example, nostalgia. When a restaurant counts on nostalgia as one of their drivers, and when their customers value nostalgia, it's a very important emotional message. When we are talking about customers that are looking for a specific type of cuisine because it reminds them of the cooking of their grandmother or another relative or another loved one, it's very important that there is an emotional connection. People create an emotional connection with certain ingredients or certain food cooking procedures or things like that. So it's very important that we can harness that and connect that in the messaging that we are doing with our restaurants and our customers. So stories are able to connect people at the emotional level, and that's very significant. At the same time, since this is a story about your restaurant, you can choose the story you want to tell. And in that way, you have a lot of different options. For some restaurants where the owner is very active on social media and very active as a person, maybe that is the story you want to share. Maybe your story is going to be based around you. In some cases, the story might be around the cook or the chef that maybe has a very high profile as well. In other cases, you might make the story about the restaurant itself, about the location of the restaurant. Maybe you are in a historic town. Maybe you are in a historic building. Maybe something very significant historically happened in the area where you are located. So you can choose to craft the story around the location or around the restaurant. So you have different choices of what you can do there. And restaurant owners shouldn't have to feel pressure that they always have to be the star in the center of the story. You can choose to be in the background if you want, and you can let your menu or your location or your restaurant's brand be the highlight. So that's something that you definitely can decide, but you need to decide, what sort of angle you want to tell your story from. Once you have that angle decided, then you can craft the message of the story. And in this, in the crafting of the message, you are what we call creating a voice, and you want to decide, what sort of voice fits better with your restaurant. If you're a very formal, high dining establishment, the voice that you are using might be somewhat different than the voice that a sports bar that is more casual would use. So you want to make sure that, the story that you are telling, the voice that you are telling the story with matches, those types of elements, and then choosing the correct communication channels that you can use. In social media, you have certain platforms that are more in tune for people that are sharing a story with words, that are sharing a text, a text message story. So, for example, Twitter, where when you are sharing a story there, it's usually a very short text that you are using. And for certain types of businesses, that might be the perfect channel if they want to have a very quick and a very thorough back and forth communication via text message or via messaging in the app. In other cases, the story that you want to share maybe is a lot more visual. And then for that, probably Twitter is not the ideal platform, but you have Instagram, which is really a platform that is based around the imagery that you are using. So you can still add a little bit of text to the post that you do on Instagram, but the key feature of that platform is the image that you are sharing. So then, if you're feeling that your story is better shared visually than without words, then Instagram is probably a good choice there. If you're looking, or if your restaurant is targeting a younger audience, and you are willing to explore and be a little more creative, then you have other platforms that are growing at a faster pace than this other more established social networks, like TikTok, but that it's for a different target audience. Right now, maybe a little skewing a little younger than the average on other platforms, and that the messaging there is delivered via video, short videos. So you have different platforms that adapt better for different types of the way that you want to share your story. In some cases, you might find a way of creating a little bit of a balance and sharing some type of content in one platform, maybe a couple of short messages on Twitter. Maybe in one of them, you're including a link to a feature from a magazine or from a local newspaper that highlighted you, and then you are complementing that with a consistent a show of postings on your Instagram with images from your restaurant or from the activities that are happening in your restaurant or in your area. So you can have a little bit of a variety there in the communication channels, and we're going to talk a little bit about further on about how to use multiple channels in case that is something you want to do. Is the owner's brand the same as the restaurant's brand? Am I in my business? Is my business is me? That is a really personal decision and a personal question that you need to ask yourselves, because the answer, if I have to give it, is it depends. It's going to be a very case-by-case decision as to how much the brand image of the owner is tied to the brand image of the business, of the restaurant. So that's definitely a question that you want to be asking yourselves. Am I my business and my business is me? What is my connection with the business? Do people immediately associate my image and me personally with the restaurant? Or is my restaurant a self-standing unit where I am an owner, but maybe people see me more as an investor, or maybe people don't even associate me necessarily personally, and I am really like an investor in the background, and the image brand overshadows mine. It's very important to know that. And the reason that I mentioned that it's very important to know that is because if you have a strong image as a person and your restaurant has an image as well, if both of you are very active, as a business and as a person in social media, it's going to be very difficult to separate yourself from your business. So if you are sharing strong opinions about different topics on social media on your personal accounts, it's going to be almost impossible to separate those from your restaurant's brand. You need to make sure that you're comfortable with people making that connection between what you are sharing online on your personal accounts versus what you are sharing with your restaurant's brand. I have seen this happen in brands where one of the brand owners or somebody that's very closely associated with the brand might have a very, very firm stance on a certain issue that maybe is a little contentious online, and they are posting things on their personal account because that is their personal account. But then when they are creating a message or posting something on their restaurant or their business account, people will do a screenshot of something that they said in their personal to answer a post on their business account, showing that they might be a little bit of a discord or a disconnect with the messages. So, then it creates a whole distraction from the marketing of the restaurant, because then, the owner will sort of get in the position of arguing that, in their personal account, they're free to share their personal opinions, etc. And the business is a separate entity, etc. Legally, it might be true. From the point of view of marketing, for the average consumer, is very difficult to make that differentiation, that distinction. So just be aware that if you have an active presence online as a person, whatever you're doing or saying on that channel as a person will have an impact in the work that you are doing on your restaurants or your business's channel. So, it's going to be very difficult for people to make the distinction, because people will associate you with your business as well. And people will make a connection between your opinions and the brand values of your business. So it's just something to be aware of, because it happens, and people more and more are trying to look a little bit behind the business wall, and who is behind the business, and how, what do they stand for, and do I see myself, associating with this person? Do I want to give this person my business, and things like that. So it's very important to keep in mind. You choose your story, and then you choose the platform that you want to use to share that story. So like I said before, there are a lot of different digital channels that you can use to share your story. Sometimes a restaurant or a business might become very successful in one, and they will focus their efforts on that one. In other cases, you might do the approach of maybe doing a little bit of content that complements each other in different platforms. Things to keep in mind: be creative, be consistent with the content that you are providing, so that people can identify and start seeing the brand in the connections. It's very confusing for potential consumers, especially if it's people that are not your current customers yet, but it's people that you're trying to attract. It's very confusing if you, for example, don't have one identifiable graphic line in your design. And so, for example, today you are posting something on Instagram, and it's a photograph that includes a logo on the photograph, includes a little bit of text on the image with some sort of a frame, and then you publish something the next week or in a couple of days, and then the color scheme is completely different on the branding. The font style of the letterings that you're using are completely different. Customers get a little bit confused when you are not consistent with the graphic design and the image. So, try to be consistent as possible with the image that you are sharing, as well as with the messaging that you are sharing. And going back to the previous example of a fine dining restaurant versus a casual sports bar, that the messaging might be different in those two establishments. So if you start creating messaging that is too different for your business, people are going to sort of miss out as, if I am coming to this restaurant, do I need to dress up? Is this a place that I can just go casually, right after work? You might confuse your customers depending on how you're communicating your message on social media. And, in that sense, you need to find that voice that fits you, or create that voice that fits your business. And that's definitely part of what we were talking in the previous slide, as to that decision as to, whether you want to be the voice for the restaurant as an individual, or whether you want to create a voice for your restaurant itself. In some cases, I have seen examples of where a business will create a voice that the spokesperson is not the business owner, but instead it could be an employee, or it could be another person on the team. In restaurants, a lot of the times it's very common to see the chef as the voice of the restaurant. If the chef has maybe a a more visible presence than the owners of the restaurant. In other cases, it might be a mix of different staff members that are the voice of the restaurant, and that it's sort of like a shared responsibility. So it shows like the restaurant, it has this team of members that are participating. So it could be very different depending on each restaurant, but you need to find, which voice do you feel that it's going to be the best fit. So which social platforms do you want to use? And I am putting the S in platforms in parentheses, because in some cases it might be just one platform that you want to focus on, and in other cases it might be multiple platforms that you want to use. So we have talked about the importance of identifying who your target markets are, identifying who are the types of customers that you are looking to attract. So one of the key deciding factors as to which platform or platforms you're going to use is the platforms where your target market is. So, you are going to look for different possibilities and there's a lot of information available as to, a little bit of the demographics of the different social media platforms, or the preferences of people on social media and different things. So you might take advantage of looking at that. The number of social media accounts, it's really going to depend on your capacity to manage them properly. A lot of the times when a restaurant opens up and they start doing a little bit of digital marketing, a lot of restaurants will come and they will create a website. And then when they're creating the website, they will decide, okay, we need to open up social media accounts so we can have all the social media buttons on our website. So they'll create a Facebook and an Instagram account and a Twitter account and a YouTube channel and other things. And that way they can link them to the icons on their website, and the website looks complete. And you can check off the box when you are creating your website that you have your social media accounts live. And then after the website goes live, you forget that you have that Twitter account. And then people go into the link on your website to the Twitter, and they see that you haven't posted anything, since you created the account or anything like that. So that usually does not provide the best value to the customer that is looking for you online. And it might even show a little bit that you are not, completely taking care of the work that you are doing there. So deciding on how many accounts that you're going to use should match the capacity and the time that you're going to be available to provide to them. If I had to decide, and I mean, again, this really depends on a very case-by-case situation with each restaurant, which is business. If I have to decide, I would rather do just one or two social media platforms really well than to try to have a presence in multiple platforms that I can barely keep up with. So, in that sense, that might be something that you want to focus on maybe first. Do a little bit of research. If your target market is basically the same customers that you have right now, if your target market is increasing the customers that you have right now, talk to your customers and try to find out which social media platforms they are on, to try to see if maybe that is the best channel that you can do. If your target market, if you're trying to attract a target market that is different than your current market, because maybe you want to expand, your market share or something like that. So you want to attract maybe a different type of customer that you currently have, do a little bit of research and maybe find out around town or in your area if there is another restaurant that is currently attracting that target market, and then see what social media platforms they are on and see a little bit of what content that they are doing. All these market research information about, analyzing the social media of direct competitors, or doing direct research to your target market to find out what platforms they're on. They can definitely help you as well in guiding you as to what social media accounts you would want to create and in which platforms. Numerous options, a lot of different things. The popularity of different social media sites varies and moves up and down, and it changes also by demographics. 10 years ago, people were, coming into Facebook in droves, and everybody wanted to be on Facebook. And it got to a point that you would have multi-generations of family members on Facebook. And then that created an environment where for maybe younger members of the family, it was no longer the ideal place for them to be socializing online, because that's where mom and grandma and grandpa were online as well. So a lot of younger internet users moved to other platforms when you had other demographics growing in certain platforms, and that was something that happened on Facebook. Instagram started attracting a lot of people that like to travel and that like going out to eat, and that would like to very actively post online. So that created a very interesting space for restaurants, because since Instagram is very visual, it's usually the platform where people are posting photos from when they're sitting on your restaurant. If you have ever seen a guest in your restaurant take out their phone and take a photo of their dish when it's being served, chances are that it's probably for Instagram, because that's usually the platform that they are doing that for. Although with some of the other platforms like Snapchat or TikTok that rely on video, maybe the guest is doing a little bit of a video there as well. So it could be for one of the other platforms. In other cases, a platform for correct or incorrect reasons might be labeled that it's specifically for a target market when it probably is not necessarily. And that is, for example, the case of Pinterest, where a lot of growth on Pinterest at a certain moment might have been led by women, but there are a lot of other users on Pinterest as well. But for some reason, a lot of businesses automatically assume that that is the only platform if you are targeting women, but not necessarily or other target markets. So digging a little deeper and finding out a little more is usually valuable, because sometimes those perceptions or those superficial analysis that we might do or that we might hear about are not necessarily true. But there are a lot of different social media platforms, and you need to be aware that that is a possibility. If you are more in creating video, then YouTube and Vimeo are other great platforms that are there as well. You need to gauge how much resources, how much time are you going to have available? Because maybe when you are going into video, you might need to dedicate a lot more resources and time to the post-production of those videos. In some cases, posting something that is completely uncut and basically the raw footage that you did might work. But in other cases, you might do a little bit of editing necessary. So you might have to keep that in mind. And then we talked already about the review sites that are also important for you to do. When you are looking at review sites, whenever possible, make sure that you have control of the of your account on those sites, because a lot of the sites will allow any user to create a review for a restaurant. So in some cases, there might be reviews about your restaurant in some of these platforms, even though you have not created a business listing for that platform. So when that happens, when a diner creates the review for a restaurant that is not there, the review is created for that restaurant. And then if you are the business owner, you can come back and claim that listing. And that way, when you claim it, you have control. If there is any wrong information regarding business hours or your telephone number or things like that, you can correct those. And if there are some reviews that maybe are not being very fair, or maybe they are providing incorrect information in the review, once you have claimed that listing, you can go in and reply to those reviews and correct the information that is being shared that not might be correct. And in the recording for our second session, Emily from Yelp provided some really good insights and feedback as to how do you deal with the different types of reviews, and whether most of the time you might have positive reviews. In some cases, when the review is not positive, especially if it's not positive with information that is not accurate, or maybe it's a little bit unfair to the restaurant, there are certain ways and there are certain tactics that you can use to try to answer those reviews without creating any more of an issue. So a lot of different platforms that are available. Each platform has their style, and each platform has a way of you sharing or has a best way of you sharing your content, whether it's more visually or whether it's video or a narrated content or a combination of text and post. One thing that we need to keep in mind, and this is something that in the last couple of years is taking a lot more focus from the point of view of marketing, is that you need to be mindful of people that are starting to suffer from social media fatigue. Initially, a lot of these platforms started as ways of connecting people and people sharing information. A lot of times, and 5-8 years ago, people would say that Facebook was a way for people to reconnect with old friends that maybe have moved away, or for families that lived in different geographic areas to share photos about the daily lives of their families and keep them closer and everything. In the last couple of years, the platforms sometimes have become places where people want to debate contentious topics, or where people want to discuss politics, or they want to discuss other things where they might agree or disagree on. So that has brought some negative energy to some of the social media platforms. You need to be aware of that, and you need to be very careful when you are creating your content calendar to make sure that your messaging and your advertising and whatever you are sharing in your content does not come off as not being sensitive to what is being discussed, or maybe what is happening around you. So it's very important to keep that in mind. Because people will sometimes overreact when they see content from a business that they feel that is completely missing the message of what is being said. And in other cases, also be very careful if you're going to be sharing content trying to jump on the bandwagon of popularity of maybe a certain phrase or a certain element, because for some people it might come off in a different or in a negative way. So you need to keep that in mind, just to make sure that you are not caught in a public relations problem, maybe just by trying to post something that you thought initially was funny, but might have been insensitive to certain people, or in some cases might not even be worth creating a post associated with your business if it's going to create a lot of very opposing reactions to it. A lot of people, especially when people are hiring somebody external to help them with their digital marketing, one of the things that companies will request is that they want to create content that is going to become viral, and by viral they mean that it's content that is going to be shared by a lot of people, and that is going to be shared all over the place. Well, depending on the message that you are sharing, or depending on the message that you're trying to transmit, maybe that is not necessarily the best strategy. A lot of the times, and for some reason, a lot of the content that goes viral is not really good content that I would like to associate with my business, with my brand. So just the fact of creating virality or having your content go viral should not be an objective of your marketing. In other cases, connecting with a few key individuals, or maybe just getting that message across to a very specific target segment that could actually become customers might be a lot more valuable than trying to attract or create a viral content with people that might never, for geographic location reasons or for whatever other reason, might never really be a potential customer for your restaurant. So just keep that in mind, and make sure that your objectives for your restaurant line up with the objective that you have for your business overall, and not just a social media objective per se. I just like adding this slide because I keep reading it all the time, and I love it because it comes out every year or every other year, and it's just sometimes the size of the numbers. So these are just examples, and this is from 2020 of the different amounts of information that are shared in different digital platforms every minute of the day. So for example, every minute of the day, 147,000 photos are uploaded on Facebook. Every minute of the day, there are 41 million WhatsApp messages being shared. Every minute of the day, 138,000 business profile ads are clicked on Instagram. And every minute of the day, another 150,000 messages shared on Facebook. 500 hours, new hours of video are loaded on YouTube. These numbers are massive. There is a ton of information that is being shared all the time online. So you need to make sure that you are dedicating the time and the effort to your social media and to your digital marketing in a way that is going to become effective and that is going to be able to cut through all this other information that is being shared, because social media and digital users are being bombarded with a lot of information. You want to make sure that your message is getting through all this, and that is getting to the right person that you want to get through, to the potential customer or to the current customer that you have as your target market. Now, we have been talking so far about efforts that you can do directly, about creating your website, and about then amplifying that digital message from your website with social media accounts that you create and that you run for your business. Another way that you can complement that, and one of the ways that are very, very powerful, is to use your customers as your ambassadors. When you have a social media account, let's say that you have an Instagram account and you are sharing photos of your dishes in your Instagram account, even if you have crafted a really nice message and there is a great story behind the dish and everything else, there is a certain level of power to that message. But that level of power is never going to come close in comparison to the power of a message of a customer, a paying customer sitting in your restaurant and taking a photo of a dish and sharing with every one of their contacts and followers how much of a great experience that they had on your restaurant, and how delicious the food was, and how the experience and the staff and everybody was so friendly and great. There is enormous power in word of mouth, because people will normally trust word of mouth from a third party that is not associated with the business more than the messaging of the business. People feel that word of mouth is validating because it's coming from somebody that has used the service as a consumer, as a customer. So really, they don't have any implied benefit in lying or in implying that the service or product is better than it actually is. So it's very important to keep that in mind, that word of mouth can be very powerful in that sense. I've used this before in a couple of the other sessions. And I recall many years ago when we were looking at traditional marketing models, and when we would talk about the importance and the value of word of mouth, there were several of the key marketing books that would say that the average person would share information about an experience that they had in a business with anywhere between 5 and 12 people. That was normally around the ballpark of who you would share it with. I would go out to a restaurant, and then between 5 and 12 people, usually my relatives or my close friends, would hear about my restaurant experience. Now in the digital age, that's completely different, because now the person visiting the restaurant, by posting their experience online, it's sharing it with thousands of people, with a lot of people that maybe they don't even know in person, people that follow them, or people that trust their taste in, or they follow you and they share the same taste in food or in travel, etc. So word of mouth has become very powerful, and the amount of information and the exposure that you can get from word of mouth when it's one of your customers sharing the information on their platform is very important. If you have your own social media accounts, and if your customers become ambassadors and they want to share their content on their social media accounts, then you have the perfect combination, because then your customers can tag you. They can add your account to their post, and that way people that are coming to see the content on their accounts, if they like what they see, they have an easy access to then come and link to your account to get more information. So you come into the radar of potential customers by the account of your customers sharing information about your business, but by having your own digital accounts that your customers can link to or can tag you on the post, then you provide that second level of information in case somebody becomes interested. So that could be very, very powerful. And that's why you would see a lot of restaurants mention, follow us on social media, or posting their social media links on their menus and in other visible areas in the restaurant as well. That user generated content is very valuable, because customers are really trusting what they are hearing from other people, not necessarily the owners of a business. And then another one that has nothing to do with digital is in social media. And when you have customers using social media as a tool to share information about your business, this creates an added opportunity for merchandising, where you can have physical branded products that you can tie in to the value of what you're offering, and maybe even create an additional revenue stream for your restaurant. Classically, we would think about the t-shirts or the hats or the other things that certain restaurants that had a brand image would be able to sell as additional. Now there are a lot of other merchandising elements that you can make a connection with, that you can have there as well, and that you should keep in your radar as possible. Keeping an eye on trends is very important. There are some trends that maybe your restaurant can tap into. So there is a possibility there that you would want to keep as a. So there's a possibility of you wanting to keep your restaurant in the in the radar, if there is something that you can take advantage of. Sometimes when the food is seen or highlighted in popular culture, maybe there is a new show on one of the streaming sites that is focused around food, that might create some new interest on a food. And if that food ties in with your restaurant and with your menu, that is something to explore and to look into. Just keep in mind that there is a difference between what could be a trend or a fad. Usually a trend, we are referring to something that becomes popular and is adopted by a segment of the population, and then it becomes part of the things that people like to do. And whereas a fad is usually something that is shorter lived and that becomes very popular for a very short time, but then it sort of fades away. So you need to keep that in mind, especially if you're going to be dedicating and investing in getting on that trend. Make sure that if you are investing resources into it, that it's going to be a trend that is going to give you a return on that investment, and not go overly on the amount that you invest in, and maybe the trend did not turn out to be a full trend and just fade a little bit away. So just keep that in mind. But keep an eye out as to what people are looking into, or what things are happening. A couple of the things that we are seeing right now, a lot of emphasis of people on the go lifestyle, and having that flexibility of providing different options on how people can access the meal from your restaurant. That is something to keep an eye out on. That one also ties in with the need for convenience. And convenience might mean a lot of different things for different customers. So just keep that in mind, as well as, convenience might mean the speed of service for one customer. Convenience for another customer might mean the different ways on how they can access that food versus, sit down in restaurant, on premise, delivery, curbside, drive-through window, etc. So convenience can mean a lot of different things. And keep an eye out also for the importance of off-premise channels, and finding ways on how you can increase your sales without having a guest actually physically sitting in your restaurant. Those are some of the trends that you need to be on the lookout for right now, and they vary constantly. And it's also important to be up to date on what is happening there. Some of the things that we are seeing as to ways of being able to connect with your customers in other off-premise channels. Definitely last year, and the closures due to the pandemic and other things showed us that having an option for off-premise is very important. It could be a really good hedge for certain times when you cannot have too many customers in person, or when you have to limit the capacity of your sit-down area. So delivery, takeout, curbside, drive-through are things that you should be considering. There are a lot of different options for that, and there are a lot of different costs that are associated with adding any of those. So just be mindful and make sure that you are doing your analysis as to which one works better for you. In some cases, a restaurant might decide that delivery created and set up by in-house staff is their way to go. And that has been something that has been done by restaurants for a while now. In other cases, delivery, you might do your calculations, and maybe for you, the best option is to use one of the national delivery services and that you can sign up for. In other cases, you might feel that maybe that is not the best option for you, and maybe you would want to find an alternative. We are seeing, for example, in areas where there is a concentration of restaurants that are close together, that they're creating some sort of delivery cooperative, where several restaurants that are on the same street or in the same neighborhood create one delivery cooperative system where they are cost sharing the cost of that delivery service that provides the service to all of their customers together. Other off-premise channels to keep an eye out for, catering has been a standard for a lot of restaurants for a very long time. So keep that one in mind always. The possibility of pop-up events, especially if you can tie them with other types of businesses, that might be a possibility. Events, food trucks as an extension, just ideas to keep there in mind. Some other ideas that have been getting a little bit of popularity in the last year or so, the possibility of having prep meal kits for home cooks. So maybe there are certain ingredients or there are certain items from your menu that you can sort of prepare for your guests that they can then finalize the dish preparation at home, and you're selling them a prep meal kit with maybe some of the ingredients already pre-seasoned or marinated or prepped already to the size, to the chop that they are going to need to use them for. So that is another possibility. Loyalty programs where you have that repeat guest experience by creating an incentive for them to return. We are seeing and we are reading a lot about the difficulty that a lot of restaurants that are located close to office areas are happening in large cities, and the difficult time of restaurants that relied heavily on the work lunch crowd to come in that are having a difficult time. That is a difficulty for restaurants that are located close to office buildings. But if we are going to have a lot more people working from home, then businesses and restaurants that are located closer to where people live now might be finding a new opportunity or alternative for people that are working from home but would like to receive a lunch prepared for them for their home office. After a while, in a couple of times a week, somebody working from home might be prepping and creating their own meals. But depending on the amount of work that they are doing from home, or depending on a lot of other factors and motivations, maybe they are willing or interested on having a meal that they can have cooked at home. Delivered at home. So just keep that in mind. And then also multi-channel digital ordering. You want to have your phone lines available for people to order. You want to have your website with the capability to be able to get orders in as well. But even some of the social media platforms now are offering alternatives for you to provide an ease of ordering for your customers. So just keep that in mind as another possible channel for creating your online orders. We are closing in here, and just a little bit of a warning here that beware that this is not a race to keep up with the neighbors. This is not a race for you to do everything that your competing restaurants are doing, or to do everything that the restaurant across the street or next door is doing. You need to decide, and you need to create your marketing plan, and the activities in your marketing plan should be able to fit your business, your restaurant, not your competitors necessarily. You might use research and you might research what your competitors are doing to fine tune your plan, but your plan has to fit your business. It has to fit the resources that you have. It has to fit the capacity that you have to implement it. And if you are going to be the spokesperson of your business, it has to fit the personality that you are going to be using. So just keep that in mind, that just because another restaurant on your street or across the street is doing something as a marketing activity, you need to consider it. You need to do a little bit of research, but you need to also be aware that not necessarily everything that they are doing is going to be a good fit for you. In closing here, just another reminder that the new normal is really going to be an evolving normal. It's going to be very hard for us to look at the work that we do as a restaurant industry as a static. Changes are probably going to be a lot faster now than they were in the past. The adaptation that we are doing to the work and to the service that we have in our restaurants are going to be evolving. So you're going to need to make sure that the marketing effort that you are doing is evolving at the same pace of those other elements, so that you can, keep up with pace and make sure that whenever there is any sort of changes to the delivery of services, whenever there is a change to the way that your guest experience is delivered and provided, that you are communicating that appropriately in the appropriate digital channels and in a timely manner to your guests, so that they can have the best experience possible. If any